And before we get started, we do got to play we have to play a game of fuck, marry, kill between
Oh,
and here are your choices. You can, well, your options are Byron Gnome, Corey Lewandowski, or your dog. What you gonna do?
Right.
well,
I
not
have to
killing.
marry my
I'd rather.
dog.
Oh, damn it! Can I say that out loud?
I don't want to
That
fuck a
I'd rather
dog.
fuck Corey. I'm not fuck Corey, kill him. But
I guess I'm gonna marry Luna and uh, uh
It's a tough one, huh?
well, the dog is not getting killed. That's he's out. He's not getting killed. So we're between the other two.
you have a dog?
No, but let me tell you what
I
Christy
have
know.
kids.
Let me tell you what Christy
You're talking
Nome
about a
did.
dog.
She married Byron. She fucked Corey Lewandowski, and she killed her dog.
You know what? I cannot. And it's so crazy because ever
Married
since
dog.
the story broke,
Married
when
Luna
I
for you.
look at Christy Nome, I see her so I can see her crazy eyes, and I'm looking at him like she's a psychopath.
And you
Like
know what? Corey Lewandowski was staring directly into them motherfuckers while he rocked her
that
world.
is true, but
Uh,
he's also he's more of a sociopath, and I don't think he has the balls to kill somebody or an animal.
no,
But
I mean, but you know, in terms of fuck, marry, kill, like I mean, I guess his version of fucking his dog would be Christy Nome.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey, this is D Knight,
This is Carol.
this is Ty.
and you're listening to the Pardon the Insurrection podcast, where, of course, not only are we not pardoning the insurrectionists, we're also not granting them immunity either.
Yes.
We aren't the Republicans on the Supreme Court, and I don't say Republicans lightly. I say that with purpose. They ain't conservative. They are Republicans. Oh, and quick shout out to Colin from Sheets and Giggles, my man. We in there. So it's been a whirlwind week. We have to welcome Carol back from vacation. Hope you enjoyed it down there in bright, sunny, warm Orlando. You also look delightful this evening.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome back. You missed out on a bunch of crazy nonsense. Did we even get the opportunity to talk about that guy who set himself on fire?
I don't think so.
Shit.
No, I think I read about that while I was at, the happiest place on earth. And I was like, no.
Yeah,
That stuff doesn't matter here.
Of course, Trump's lawyers were doing a lot of setting themselves on fire in court as well in multiple venues, but we'll eventually get around to that. So, of course, Trump's criminal trial for the hush money election interference case. And yes, we have to be specific about that because it wasn't just hush money. It was intended to violate campaign finance laws to keep that story about Trump having an affair with the porn star and a stripper out of the headlines right around the time of the 2016 election, where his campaign was most vulnerable, right after the Access Hollywood tape dropped, where everyone I know was making jokes about grabbing people by the pussy, not like jokes in terms of, yes, we support the idea.
You took a breath. Phew.
Sorry.
I thought you might never breathe.
Yeah. Yes. Anyway, there's no knees on my neck today, but so everyone I knew was joking about how ridiculous it was that like something like that could happen, where you on tape saying something that ridiculous, and then it suddenly disappeared from media coverage less than a day later because of the infamous Hillary Clinton email dump from WikiLeaks that they got from the Russians. Coincidence? I'm sure. But the release of the Access Hollywood tape painted the Trump campaign into a corner where they were willing to do just about anything to ensure that no more damaging information from about Trump.
He was willing to make sure his lawyers spent their personal money to do anything for him, or delay payment as long as possible, with hopes of not having to make good on his deal that would have constituted the election interference.
Yeah,
but we talk about Stormy. How much did he pay Karen Dougal?
Karen McDougal.
150.
So
Well, no, some.
what happened is, so David
Let's look it
Pecker
up.
talked about this on the stand, how after they made an agreement in 2015 between himself, Michael Cohen, and Trump to catch and kill these harmful Trump stories, but not only that, there's also an agreement to put out harmful stories about his opponents, and we'll get to that in just a second. But the Karen McDougal thing, so Pecker was like, all right, cool, we got this story, seems pretty bad. Consulted with Trump and Cohen, and they were like, pay her off. And he's like, all right, here's his $150K. And the way they kind of, the way he organized those payments were to make sure it appeared as though it didn't come from Pecker specifically. Like, he used a former employee to kind of get around the news becoming public to his, the employees of his company. Kind of, I don't know. They went through an extraordinary level of concealing these payments. But yeah, the $150K was like, all right, Karen, here you go. And it kept her quiet. But Trump never paid Pecker back for that. And when it came time to pay Stormy
Wait.
Daniels,
He didn't pay him. He didn't pay someone? Sorry, this is my shocked face.
Shocker.
color you surprised, I guess.
Yay, I can finally do visual jokes.
Yay. Yeah. And we're so used to being an audio medium, we don't know how to handle ourselves now that you can see us. But yeah, so after Trump didn't reimburse Pecker for the payments to Karen McDougal, not only was Pecker like, I don't know about paying this Stormy Daniels thing because y'all didn't give me back, but he also just didn't want to be associated with a porn star, which I guess I can kind of understand the argument. His line of reasoning in that regard was like, our biggest carrier is Walmart. So he was willing to draw the line somewhere.
But Playboy is fine.
Look, Playboy is a very... Yeah, pick your battle. Hey, look, Playboy does slightly
You
more...
only have to assume they had... Oh, nothing.
Playboy does slightly more tasteful content than the things Stormy Daniels were engaging in, if you're one to judge in that regard. I mean, I'm personally not. I feel like the line is thin, but I can see some argument. And of course, there's all kind of journalistic articles that Playboy would do. They would do exposés and such.
Yeah.
And
I guess I was thinking it was more of a judgment of the woman than the judgment of the content.
Yeah. But Playboy actually used to do really good content in their articles. Like when they have the long form, they have the pictures and
otherwise what would men have told their wives?
No, but you know what, Ty, you're actually right. Like the interviews specifically, and there are a lot of exclusives that they did over the course of their long run there. They were very high quality. I mean, look, it's not what Stormy was doing. Okay.
Yeah.
Just to put that out there. But so I think one of the things the prosecution nailed with making Pecker their first witness is that not only was he so clear and convincing and straightforward and forthright, I mean, he was kind of endearing. And I don't mean that in terms of like, I like the guy, because I think obviously he's got a lot of flaws and a lot of problems. But I think in terms of like his presentation in the courtroom to the jury made him a believable figure. And the story he was telling was so compelling that he's forever shaped the course of this trial. Like the jury is going to look at the rest of the evidence presented over the course of the trial through the lens of the information that Pecker testified about in terms of this being a strategy to influence the 2016 election. You guys got any thoughts on that?
You know what I would also say about Pecker is that he didn't come across as someone having an axe to grind. And
Right.
I think that made a lot of, that makes also a lot of difference. Like he didn't come in like he was somebody that was out for revenge or that he was like out to get, he's like, this is what happened. And like, it is what it is. This was what it was. And he just laid it out there. And I think that gives him more credibility in a
Yeah.
lot of ways.
He doesn't have all the same problems. He has none of the problems that Michael Cohen has.
None of the baggage of being a part of the Trump inner circle in a way that everybody was trying to cover their ass, or everybody was trying to, he was like, I was this.
Also, he's got
outlet. This is
immunity,
our
right?
relationship.
We'll get to that in a second.
I'm just saying it helps to, I would imagine someone would be more candid if they had immunity.
Fair enough. Here's another thing, Ty. How do you feel about the fact that Trump's never publicly said anything bad about David Pecker? Doesn't that like raise a red flag? Shouldn't that be like, oh, well, then he must really have the dirt?
Exactly. That is exactly it. Because even after, and anytime anyone has testified, anytime someone has said Trump is boom, 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 he's all caps lock, Captain Caps Lock. This stuff. Oh, I met him, and he was whatever that Trump says about people, but he didn't push back or say anything, and that says more than anything Trump could have said.
Right, because the only
that
two
tells
people
me that David Pecker has the goods on Trump.
he has to, and like the two people Trump's never said anything. Well, yeah, I guess the two people he's never said anything about, David Pecker and Judge Cannon. And you see how Judge Cannon is in the bag for him. So, considering the fact that Pecker is out here, blasting Trump, no pun intended. He clearly must have some insight into a number of misdeeds done by this guy. But so one of the first things the prosecution established was like this meeting in Trump Tower in 2015. Again, it's very reminiscent of the 2016 Trump Tower meeting with Don Jr. and the Russians. It's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we need you to help us out if some bad stories come out about me, and we need you to dig up dirt on our opponents. It's basically the same agreement, right?
Yeah.
So isn't it kind of funny? It's ironic that Trump is such a creature of habit that when he engages in these criminal conspiracies, if they work one time, then he just tries them indefinitely. Because this
Are you suggesting a pattern of criminal behavior?
A pattern of criminal behavior, Carol. So he engages in this catch and kill scheme. He literally did that with the Russians, where they basically killed the Access Hollywood tape by leaking dirt about Hillary Clinton, which was not actual dirt. There was nothing harmful in those emails, but it did capture the news, like the entire news ecosystem focused on that. And not only that, once Bill Barr was in office, what did Bill Barr do for Trump? Like we have a literal example of it in this case where Bill Barr went after Michael Cohen and then made sure to kill that investigation so nobody went after Trump afterwards.
Bill Barr acted as Trump's personal fucking lawyer, like in every case that Trump was facing. Bill Barr, he was Trump's personal legal
consigliere.
He said, yes, exactly. He was his personal legal thug. That's it.
Yeah.
And though, Bill Barr comes out, everything that he said when he was, talking about Trump and the January 6th thing and stuff, and everything he says is gratuitous. Bill Barr is shrewd, if nothing else. I mean, he's basically Newt Gingrich with black hair. That's it.
Well, he was more than just Trump's lawyer. He was his David Pecker.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
he was Trump's Pecker.
Because Trump's Pecker clearly wasn't enough. He had to get another one. Anyway.
Well, lots of women have described it. Sorry.
Yes, insufficient. Yes, they've described it as insufficient. So a couple things about Pecker. Back in 2019, and you all might remember this, there was that story of Jeff Bezos and his affair. So Pecker was going to have damaging information about Bezos published after he had ordered his media outlet to investigate Bezos. And then, Bezos said that Pecker was apoplectic, that is a quote, about the Washington Post investigation into Pecker's company. And that's why they were going back and forth. And there was like the Washington Post was particularly focused on these connections between AMI and the Saudi royal family. Something that we likely won't have the opportunity to get into, but maybe you can do some digging out there if you're listening into some the links between the Saudi royal family and Pecker's payments, because we're not entirely sure where he even got the 150K to pay off McDougal, but there's a lead for you to follow if you're bored.
Well, I mean, he's a journalist. Well, using that term loosely.
Loosely, yes.
And as I can attest, journalists don't make any fucking money. So where he had that kind of scratch that he could just give up and hand off with
well, weren't they paying him? Wasn't he part of the scheme? So maybe he was skimming off the top there. We'll find out about what other sort of things do you think he got immunity for? Do we know his immunity deal? I assume it was private.
I'm assuming it only covers the things that he testified about, but we don't. So Trump wasn't actually paying Pecker. Part of the deal was that, Trump coverage was good for the magazine. So that helped them out in that regard. And then negative information about Trump's opponents was also good for the Inquirer. The thing where, like, some of it fell apart as far as Pecker's testimony is concerned. You see, he was saying it was a mutually beneficial relationship because of that. But then, on the other hand, killing these 2 negative stories, well, 3 if you include the doorman supposedly having a story about Trump allegedly fathering a child with a maid. Those stories probably would have been good for the publication. So killing those actually cost Pecker quite a bit of money. And that's not even if you just count having to pay them off. But yeah, who knows where the money was coming from? Again, we don't have enough insight into the financial arrangements to figure out where that money came from within the company to make any kind of judgment. But one of the things that's probably important to note is Pecker did talk about how they did have a habit of catching and killing these stories. Not just in terms of Trump specifically, but they had a history of it. But they usually paid like $5 or $10 grand for a story. They were never paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for anything.
Exactly.
And that's why Pecker had to go to great lengths to cover up the payment, because people on the floor would have been like, "What the fuck is this? Why are we in bed with Trump spending all this money to help him out?" And Carol, as you were saying earlier, Pecker not only was granted immunity by the Southern District of New York in the Michael Cohen investigation, but he was also granted immunity by the Manhattan DA's office. And I think that's actually a detail that we didn't know until his testimony here. And the thing is, he was granted immunity in the Manhattan DA's office.
Ratting out Michael Cohen, right?
No, that was the Southern District of New York. This Manhattan DA agreement, that was in 2019. That was before Alvin Bragg even got there. So the Manhattan DA's office was looking into this for quite a long time. In case people were wondering, like, well, what the fuck? Were they just sitting on their hands the whole time?
I mean, Cy Vance had the case before Alvin Bragg took over, his position. Yeah. So this has been a long-standing investigation into what was going on. It didn't just appear out of nowhere.
No. And Vance was also looking at the financial fraud crimes, but he passed on those for whatever reason. I don't know why he didn't believe that case was strong enough, because once we heard the evidence
in court, did. He got a fucking $50,000 donation.
Yeah, well, look, that's Trump magically dodging his bullets all the time. There's got to be some shenanigans going on.
Is that really enough to retire in shame?
No, not retire, but it's enough for some people to look the other way every rare occasion. But part of that agreement, though, and while you alluded to, Carol, that it would be incentive for someone to be super forthcoming, part of the agreement does also allow for Pecker to be prosecuted if he lies on the stand. So he could spend a stint in Rikers too, just like Weisselberg. Yeah. So he's got to be truthful and forthcoming, otherwise his ass will end up in jail too. And Man, it's just been so crazy here lately. I just like I can't believe that we're at the point. And let's stop and back up and zoom out for a second here. Trump is on trial for crimes.
Yes.
And we're like in the middle of testimony. Like there's testimony, there's been opening statements, like we've had multiple witnesses at this point, and we're 2 weeks in, and it's absolutely fucking bonkers. Like I can't believe, like I got to tell you, because it's like just a deluge of haters on the internet telling me all this time for years and years Trump was never going to be held accountable for anything. He's going to get away with all of it. And I was like, okay, like unfortunately, because of the office of the presidency offering him a level of protection that practically no other criminal defendant would ever get, it's going to be a process getting here, but we're going to get there. It's going to take some twists and turns. Just hang in there. And people were just, shitting all over me. Will call me when he's indicted, and then he gets indicted. Will call me when he's in court. He's in court. Will call me when all right, man, damn.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who keep pushing the
moving
They keep moving the goalposts and keep
Moving the
pushing it
goalposts.
back. And there's, like they're the pessimism and yeah, okay. In a lot of instances, I've been pessimistic too. However, like this case, which everyone shit on as being the worst case of him being, they're like the, classified documents, this, and that this case was like just like bottom of the barrel of the cases. And
Right.
This is literally the one that will probably be the nail in the coffin and be his downfall. So that's been pretty interesting.
Now, I wasn't in that group of people that were sharding all over this case. I was like, yeah, I can see how in comparison these other things don't make it seem it pales in comparison. But if you think about it, like this is the origin story for Trump getting into the White House to get the protections of being president in the first place. Like if Trump hadn't committed these crimes, in all likelihood, Trump wouldn't be president because he didn't win the popular vote. And people forget. They're like, oh, Hillary Clinton, she ran a terrible campaign. She got 3 million more votes than this dude did.
Yeah.
Right. And if this story or any of these stories that Pecker covered up had it dropped, especially at in October, late in the race, it would have been a wrap. Trump would have lost. He would have never been president. Maybe he wouldn't have gotten indicted for this, but he wouldn't be in the White House. We would have had President Clinton. And just like everything that Trump did after the fact hinges on this crime. And that's why this is so important. And that's probably why the DA's office took the time to organize their witnesses in such a way that Pecker, he led the charge, so to speak, in making sure to paint this trial in a proper light.
I honestly think that the prosecutors did this to start it off with a bang and put this in the jurors' heads. Because if they was if you're watching a movie and it starts out slow and then you're sitting and you're hanging in there. So by the time the end comes, even if it's good, you're like, man, I checked out like an hour ago, of that.
No, absolutely.
And this would be the same thing if they were starting with something else that wasn't as kind of hard hitting, that the jurors would have checked out like, this is a nothing burger. So by the time it would have gotten to Pecker, if they had saved him to last, that the jurors would have already been so fucking disenchanted and checked out that it wouldn't have made. So doing it with this, it's making them like, well, damn. So now, as you said, Dee, everything that they hear here on out, they're going to be looking at through the lens of David Pecker's testimony, because everything everyone else says, every other witness, they're going to be putting it into the context of how this started and what David Pecker set the stage for.
Yeah.
And I
like
think
you
that
said,
was
he doesn't have the
smart move.
And he doesn't have the hangups of Cohen, like you said. If Cohen going first,
and the baggage.
Yeah.
And the baggage of it.
He would have been cross-examined to hell,
With Pecker, they had he and Trump had their relationship or what have you. But with Cohen, there are so many other things. And, just being honest, full disclosure here, they could make a case that Cohen just has an axe to grind. And so he's coming at it from a different perspective in a different way, so it could
Yeah.
give some
And that-
kind of doubt.
That is
to
why
the
Cohen's
jury.
going to be in the middle, and they're going to sandwich him with Pecker to begin
Yeah.
with, and someone nearly as captivating at the end. And you're not even really going to be thinking about Cohen, or at least the jury won't by the time they make this decision. But hey, Carol, here's some of these funny headlines, and I mean not funny, but like they're actually somewhat ridiculous. Some of these headlines that Pecker published on Trump's orders, because they had such a relationship with Cohen.
Donald Trump, the man,
Yeah.
the legend. Ted Cruz shamed by porn star. Donald Trump gets the Duke's blessing. Bungling surgeon Ben Carson left sponge in patient's brain.
Hey, you know how fucking crazy that is, Carol? They put out a story.
The Ben Carson stuff is wild to
It
me.
is amazing.
'Cause
Like, can you think about? All right, it's 2016. It's the primary, and then you go to the grocery store and you see as you're walking to the checkout, like hanging on the magazine rack, Ben Carson left sponge in patient's brain. He was doomed. Did that because look,
Is
and
that from 2015? He wasn't. If this is 2016, he wouldn't be in the race anymore.
yeah, 2015, yeah.
All right, because he would. I mean, Trump would just have like a gratuitously mean or just pointless story planted too. Why not? Like that guy dared to challenge me. And we got JFK's secret son endorses Donald Trump. Donald dominates.
And now RFK is campaigning to be Trump's running mate. That's hilarious. Yeah, Donald dominates. This one was great. Obama's half brother cheering on Donald at debate. Like this is beyond wild. This one there was one about the 5 mistresses that Ted Cruz has. That
gosh, yeah.
Like, so that one actually made it into like mainstream news, like normal news outlets were actually talking about that, but we should have
Can't
known.
imagine him having sex at all, let alone with 5 women.
That
Exactly.
is true.
And that's how
agree
you
with
should have
Carol.
known that it wasn't real. Because who's going to sleep with Ted Cruz? The only person, yes, not even his wife. This one, Donald Trump blasts Ted Cruz's dad for photo of JFK assassin. Remember how we were talking about like how absurd it was? Like, of course, Ted Cruz's dad didn't have anything to do with the JFK assassination, but that we were even having that conversation is absolutely wild. And that was all of this stuff was cooked up by David Pecker and Michael Cohen. Like Cohen literally had like the ability to sign off on these headlines and these stories. But yeah, so just absolute bonkers. And again, like just the lengths that these dudes went to in secret to coordinate all of this, but to try and keep Trump's fingerprints off of it. It reminds me of the fake elector plot where Trump went through all of this work to try and coordinate these fake electors, but pretend like he had nothing to do with it. And they just show up at the Capitol on January 6th for Mike Pence to be like, oh, damn, I wonder where these electors came from. No, dog, you knew where they came from. You was right there cooking up the plan with everybody. It's just absolutely wild. But so we'll move on from.
Did he really cruise to victory as due to Ted Cruz's endorsement?
I don't think that's actually the case, Carol.
And he also claimed that Ted Cruz stole the Iowa caucus, like when Ted Cruz won on one of the major caucuses, and he claimed that it was
rigged.
Stolen.
Yeah.
It was rigged, yes.
And so there you go. Get another instance of Trump claiming elections are rigged when he loses. And look, again, all of this is just setting the stage for his multiple attempts to cheat in 2020 and to claim that the election is rigged in 2024 if he loses. But so we're going to move away from the Trump trial, as enthralling as it is. So earlier this week, or rather earlier last week, Donald Trump's lawyers got their case in front of the Supreme Court, arguing that presidents, in fact, shouldn't be allowed to be prosecuted. They should have absolute immunity, regardless of what they're being charged for. And I don't know if you all listen to the oral arguments there, but I listened to them live, and I got to tell you, some of that shit was mind blowing. I'm like, I can't believe we've reached the point where people, like a legitimate lawyer, is making these insane arguments in front of the Supreme Court. And not only were the arguments insane, some of the justices were entertaining them as though like this is a legitimate legal argument that we should be having here.
That part,
Hey, which
like
ones?
that part is the worst for me because, yeah, his lawyers are going to make the most insane and ridiculous arguments. But these people that have been appointed to the highest court in the land are actually giving it those arguments credibility is sickening as fuck to me. Like, and I was like, literally, there are 3 people who are the only adults on the fucking court to challenge and ask real questions. It's fucking ridiculous. And let's not even get into fucking Clarence Thomas and him not recusing himself.
That was too many fucks in a row, Ty.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, wait, sorry. Beep, beep, beep,
Hey.
beep, beep, beep.
Yeah, where to start? Hey, you know what? You're right.
Thank you, Carol.
Let's start with
Throwback.
Clarence Thomas. Why is
So-
Clarence Thomas on this case when we all know that his wife is an unindicted co-conspirator? And she
'cause
knew.
he's
Oh,
afraid
I
that
know,
she's gonna
because
kill him
there
when
are
he's
no
asleep.
rules of judicial conduct that apparently that the Supreme Court think apply to them, and no one is holding them accountable.
I think you nailed it. Yeah, there's
That was so
absolutely.
professional. I just thought that he thought that Jenny would kill him in his sleep. So,
That
but I like
too,
your argument
possibly.
way better because that was way more professional. But yeah, no, absolutely.
get
They
one
feel
in.
that they are the lifetime appointments. They feel that they are above the law. They feel that they are above, well, I wouldn't even say above scrutiny because I don't think they care about that. But they have been emboldened and they are so brazen in their attitudes and how they approach going about the legal arguments. And it literally, when Republicans talk about a kangaroo court, SCOTUS really is a kangaroo court.
Yeah, they are the Spider-Man meme. Like,
Yeah.
and Clarence Thomas is so bold about it. He's like, he was literally downplaying what happened on January 6th in court, like during the oral arguments. And that's how you know dude knows how bad it was. Cause like you the only one out here trying to make it sound like it wasn't nothing. But Carol, as you were asking about some of the arguments, so one of the arguments Trump's lawyer was making that the justices didn't really entertain. They appeared to be they seemed fairly disappointed with this argument, but he made it anyway. Was this idea that presidents should be immune even if they order the military to assassinate their political rival?
I did hear that one.
And you know how short-term memory works is I remember when they wouldn't take up the case during Trump's bogus election stealing claims, and when they declined to take up the case, there were pictures with nooses around the necks of Kavanaugh and Barrett coming from MAGA, and how soon they forget that they are not immune to his revenge, wrath, vengeance, whatever.
Yeah, one of the things I was saying about how short-sighted it will be if they decide to grant, presidential immunity to some of these claims is like, okay, what if Trump is reelected and he doesn't like something that the Supreme Court rules? Well, then he can just have y'all assassinated and y'all can't get in his way no more. Very short-sighted here. And look, no one talks about this. This is super important January 6th information. Sorry to rehash stuff from 4 years ago, but a lot of this doesn't get ironed out in the media. One of the underreported plots from January 6th is how the Proud Boys had a plan to occupy the Supreme Court, right? So they weren't just going to keep Congress hostage. They were also going to take over the Supreme Court and make sure the justices couldn't use the Supreme Court to somehow hand the election back to Joe Biden. And they were also going to camp out at the White House and make sure the military couldn't remove Trump. So it was like,
They know that the Supreme Court can conduct sessions remotely, right?
that's not important, Carol. The
Okay.
point, I'm just,
Sorry, they're not called the smart boys. Sorry,
okay,
go on.
yes, exactly. Yes. The point
But
there,
they are proud.
They're proud. A lot of people are proud of their ignorance. Yes.
just the point there is that the justices were potential targets on January 6th. And no one's brought it up. No one brings it up when they have these oral arguments in front of the Supreme Court. No one brings up the fact that Clarence Thomas's wife was communicating with the fake electors and Mark Meadows and John Eastman, and she's intricately involved in the plot. No one mentions these things, and the justice, because no one brings it up, the justices feel entitled to pretend like none of these things ever happened in order to come to conclusions that benefit Trump, regardless of.
But I thought that they formed an ethics committee to look into their own crime.
Yeah, well, look, even there's the fundamental this fundamental theory about the way that law works, in that no man should be the judge in his own case. Well, clearly the Supreme Court has forgotten that. But another argument that Trump's lawyer was making is that should a president engage in a coup, specifically ordering the military to stage a coup so that he can remain in office, that is an official act and that presidential immunity should apply. Now, a lot of these arguments
was insane.
Oh, yeah, it was fucking bonkers.
That argument was insane. And he said it with a straight face. And Sonia Sotomayor, she was like, all right, I'm pretty sure her brain was broken at that point. Then she was like, okay, so what you're saying, he's like, well, we need to get into the technical facts of this. And then if it was just like, if that was the key word in every argument that Trump's lawyer made. It was like, well, if it comes to that, or if this was, and she's like,
yeah.
And I'm just really surprised that, I wish that Kagan would be more vocal. And I feel like Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson are the most vocal.
Yes.
On the court. Yeah, I would really like to hear more from Kagan. I feel like she's been in the background a lot, not disparaging her, but I would really like to have her be more present.
Look, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think these oral arguments are going to have much influence over the actual decisions to come out from the court. So Kagan can do her work in rebutting some of the ridiculous things that the conservative justices will say in the majority. But I think part of the problem, just again, these are bad faith actors, right? So one of the things Roberts brought up, and again, so first of all, Trump's lawyer initially, his position was that absolute immunity for presidents, point blank, period. And then it was like, well, absolute immunity for presidents in their official acts in somewhere of the range of the outer limits of their official acts. And then it was like, he basically conceded it was hit or miss. And, maybe this particular case should be sent down to the lower court for more fact finding about what is and isn't official act and what should be given immunity. And that is actually the delay tactic, to have it sent down to a lower court so a ruling can be issued, so Trump's lawyers can appeal it and then send it back up to the Supreme Court. And that'll delay.
Pick it back up.
Yeah, that'll effectively delay the trial until after the election, which in a way is granting Trump a form of immunity, regardless of what the justices rule. Because if he wins the election, he's never going on trial for this. But
that's a good. No, actually, that is a great point.
Yeah, that's
basically kicking the can down the road to take away their accountability for having to make a ruling.
Yeah,
will they necessarily say that they can't continue the case?
Yeah, they're going to stay the case. But so beyond that, and I think a lot of people are already aware that delay is the whole game. And again, insiders from Trump's people said that they already pulled off the heist. This was the heist, getting it in front of the Supreme Court and getting this delay. But one of the things Justice Roberts brought up, which I thought was particularly interesting, aside from saying that Ford's pardon of Nixon is one of those things that people agree upon now to have been one of the better presidential decisions, which is absurd. It was a ridiculous decision. He never should have granted Nixon that pardon. Nixon's ass should have went to jail, and then dudes could have learned that, hey, you know, when I'm in office, I have to abide by the law, as the Constitution says. You know, it's the president's
There are
job to execute
consequences.
Yeah,
There are consequences.
But one of the things Roberts was saying that I found to be, well, look, we haven't had enough consequences for law-breaking presidents, but that's another story for another podcast. The thing that Roberts was saying that caught my attention was this argument that it was possible that Ford's pardon of, well, he was asking the Solicitor General from the DOJ, was Ford's pardon of Nixon, could that have been considered obstruction of justice? Was that interfering in the investigation of Nixon? And the reply from the Department of Justice was no, because that's, you know, the president has a constitutional right to exercise his pardon authority that's unchecked by the other branches. But really, what I could construe Roberts asking is, if we do this thing because there's a co-conspirator on our court to bail Trump out of being prosecuted, could we be prosecuted for obstruction of justice? Is the way I interpreted that I don't think anybody else has picked up on.
No, I hadn't even thought about that, D. But you asking, number one, the question, I think was a very good question, because that's like, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that with Ford's pardon, but also what the intent of asking the question was.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, like when I tell people, like when they talk about the interview with Putin and
this ain't a commercial,
after he kind of emasculated Tucker Carlson, and he was saying in the interview on Russian TV, and he was like, Biden is good for America. He's better for America. I said, but what he didn't say was Trump was better for us. And that's kind of the same thing, because no, that's the same kind of principle in the way that you put it. What Robert said, but what he was really asking was, look, that puts in the same vein to me.
Of all the crazy shit that was like batted around at the Supreme Court, that one perked, like my ears really perked up when I heard that, because I was like, oh, he's talking about himself there. Because clearly, obviously, you know, a president granting a pardon isn't a crime, but you could construe, like, if the granting of a pardon was part of a criminal conspiracy, then maybe the pardon isn't valid. And it could be, you could prosecute a president for that. So let's imagine, like, oh, you know, I've been convicted of a federal crime. I need a presidential pardon. President's not going to pardon me, but what if I offer him, you know, $100,000 bribe? Does that make the pardon illegal? Can the president be held accountable for that? I would say yes, not for the pardon itself, but the bribe. Well, what if part of a criminal conspiracy is, you know, you're president, your vice president is aware of the criminal conspiracy, you commit the crime, you get busted, and the agreement was to, if you get caught, resign and let your vice president ascend to the presidency and issue you a pardon. Well, then is that part of a criminal conspiracy? I mean, I guess, you know, I'm not a lawyer enough to like detail the ins and outs of whether or not that's worthy of prosecution. But what if there's an agreement between Supreme Court justices and a criminal president to grant him immunity should he be indicted for engaging in criminal
believing that their, you know, misdeeds will not be prosecuted or not be gone after against? That is a very, very good point, man. I'm impressed. Good.
Oh, D's smart.
I do okay.
He's not
sometimes.
just a pretty face.
You say that you've gotten all made up and you've let your hair down and you're looking all beautiful over there too.
With her red lipstick.
I was traveling today.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, do you get jet lag from flying north to south? I don't really know.
No, I'm not jet lagged. I'm just tired.
No, I was just Right.
You think taking the kids to Disney World is relaxing?
No, that's
It was
like
You
really
need a
fun.
vacation from your vacation.
yeah,
Carrie.
you should have
That's
left
what-
them there for like a week and came back home and just decompressed.